Today, I'm going to show you how to create this fabric-bound magical potions and drafts book. The things we will need to create our potion book is a book, and I am using the Artist Loft sketch pad that is 5.5 inches by 8 inches. I picked mine up at Michael's, but I'll put a link to one on Amazon in the description down below. I did create my template to fit this particular book, so just know that if you are using my template, this is the size I've made it for, so you'll need to adjust accordingly if you use a different book. We will need some freezer paper. It's important that it's freezer paper and not parchment paper or something like that. The freezer paper has a wax coating on one side, and that's going to be important for this. We will need some fabric, and I highly recommend you use an ivory or white or a light gray, something lighter in color, because if you do a darker color, you're not going to see our print as well. We are going to need an iron. You will also need some glue, so you could use Tacky glue, you could use Mod Podge, or you could just use a glue stick for the whole thing. Whatever your preference may be, if you do use the glue, you will need a foam brush. We are going to need scissors. We're going to need some packing tape as well as an inkjet printer. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is take our fabric, and I did take my fabric and iron it, so then that way most of the wrinkles got taken out, and we're going to lay it on top of our freezer paper. Now I have the freezer paper laying here with the wax side up, facing towards our fabric, and all we're going to do is apply our iron to the fabric so that it adheres the wax side of the freezer paper to the back of the fabric. It's going to give us enough stability to be able to run the fabric through our printer. And it will peel off easily once we're done printing, so we'll just have our fabric with our design on it. So I'm going to go ahead and finish applying the paper to all of this fabric. Okay, so my fabric and my paper are now joined together. I'm going to flip this over. And I have a piece of legal paper here, which if you don't have, you can just use, a ruler and measure out the 8.5 by 14. But since I have a piece of the paper here, I'm going to use it as a stencil. And all I'm going to do is lay it on the fabric and the paper and make sure there's enough room that I can cut around it. And then I'm just going to trace it out. And now that I have traced my size, I can take scissors and cut it out. Okay, so now that I have ironed this again, just to make sure that there's no wrinkles and everything is adhered really well and it's nice and flat to go in our printer, I'm going to go ahead and put this through my printer. And it's preferable that you use a inkjet printer over a laser printer because the laser printer doesn't really go on the fabric as nicely as the inkjet does. So it's one of those times where an inkjet printer is preferential, and I feel like more people have that, so it will work out just fine for most of you. And just so you know, I used the iron on the cotton setting, which is my highest setting on my iron, and I made sure to not have the steam on because we don't really want the moisture with this. We just want the heat so that it adheres our freezer paper to the back of our fabric. And then another thing I recommend doing just to make sure it goes through the printer easily is to take some packing tape. And we are just going to put a tiny bit across the front. Not enough that it's going to impede what we print on it, but enough to add a little bit of stability. And then we're going to flip this over. And we are going to fold this up. Again, this is going to give us a stronger front edge as it's going through the printer. And then all I'm going to do is trim the excess off of the sides, and then I have a easier way to get this into the printer, so then that way it doesn't jam up. Now we have a nice clean edge that's sturdy that can go through the printer. And now I'm going to go take this and go print this on my inkjet. Okay, so now that I have printed this on the fabric on my inkjet printer, we can actually detach it from the freezer paper. And we're just going to pull it off, and then we'll remove the tape that we put on here as well. And again, the packing tape is just to help give it a little bit of stability to go through your printer a little easier. And we are left with our beautiful fabric printed. And you can do full color, partial color. I kind of liked the aged look of the black and white. And then I did add a little bit of color with the seal that kind of matches the inner pages that I printed. And I'll have the template for this down below as well. And I just printed this on cardstock, and that's going to end up covering up any of our edges on the inside here. So I'm just going to cut these out, and then we'll start to put our fabric on our binding. The first thing I'm going to do is take my scissors, and you can kind of see where the binding is going to be on here. And all I'm going to do at the base of that is do a diagonal cut that goes right to the base. And the same thing over here. And then I'm going to do the same thing at the top. Okay, and then I'm going to set this on here. And I need to go a little bit deeper with my cuts. Let me move this so you can see, sorry. And now all I'm going to do is flip this over. And I'm going to use our piece of paper we used as a template to go underneath of this. And I'm going to apply a little bit of glue stick on here. So this goes on purple, but it will dry clear. And all I'm going to do is flip this up so that I'm folding our binding. Okay, so now I have this side folded. And I'm going to do the other side. And before I do that, I'm going to just make sure that everything lines up correctly. Yep, should be good, so I'm going to go ahead and fold that up. And then rub that down good. So now that we have our binding ready, we can go ahead and apply our glue to this, and we can start to apply the fabric to this. And I'm actually going to just kind of squeeze a small amount on here, and then I will brush it out. And we don't want it to be like crazy thick because you don't want it to go through your fabric and potentially make your ink that you just printed on there bleed. But as long as you just have a thin layer that'll make it tacky, it'll be enough to stick it down really well and then not go through your actual cover. And you don't have to get fancy with this. We're just making sure that everything gets a good coat. And then do a really good layer on the edge of this. And make sure you really get in the groove. Okay, so now that we have our front and the binding, we're going to go ahead and line up the binding first. And I'm going to check that. Yep, that looks good. Okay, so once you get your binding on, stick it down. You don't have to rub real hard, you just want to get it to adhere. And then we're going to start to get the front cover on. So since everything is tacky, really work into that groove and stick that down good. And then start to work out towards the edge. And again, if you want, you could use a glue stick for this. You just want your glue to be tacky, but not too wet because you don't want it to, again, go through what we just printed on here. And once we get that all the way done, we're actually going to do the inside edge first, and then we'll do the back cover. And we are going to make a slit here on the corners. And then you're just going to push this up. Okay, and once we get there, then we can take our edge over here and just kind of make some V-cuts. And then we're going to put this in. And it's okay if your fabric comes in a little bit because we are going to cover that up with our little colorful inside flap. And then just flip this up. And we have our front cover done. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my sheet in here, and I'm actually going to use the glue stick for this. And I'm going to put this right to the edge. Okay. And then smooth it down good. And now we can do the same thing back here. And once we have everything applied to our book and it has dried, we have our magical potion and draft book out of an ordinary sketch pad. And I think this turned out really magical, and we have a really great quality with this fabric covering on our book, and it just makes it feel that much more authentic. So now you guys know how to print on fabric, and the sky's the limit. You guys can do all kinds of things with it, but I just think it really takes it to another level. And you could definitely age this up some more by taking some sandpaper and fraying the fabric a little bit and revealing the black beneath. You could have pre-stained the fabric with a little bit of coffee or tea, anything like that. But I just wanted to show you what this looked like straight out of the printer and what you can really accomplish with it. And I think it turned out great. and I love that it's still usable. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And if you guys like this video, give me the thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, and we will catch you guys later. Thanks so much.